Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Alyssa Freeman. She is an author, therapist, shamanic practitioner, and hypnotherapist. Her work includes dream analysis and tapping into your unconscious and universal messages to have a direct link to universal knowledge. In this episode, we'll discuss how this connection with Source helps you heal, live your purpose, and make the world a better place. Alyssa, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, universal messages and universal knowledge. I like the sound of that already. So, tell us that your journey, I believe, started with a relationship with a spirit guide, which spanned 4 decades.
That's right. Actually, something began before that. When I was about 9 years old, I found myself sitting in this room with all these adults around me. They're all sitting on the floor. And at the front of the room was this monk. And this monk was teaching everyone meditation techniques. I don't quite know how I got to be there with all these adults at 9 years old, but here I was sitting cross-legged amongst all these people. And I can remember at one point the monk looked at me dead in my eyes and asked me why I should be there. And, and the funny thing is I was so nervous and I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't say anything. And all I did was just stare back. He just looked into my soul and I've never felt anything quite like it. But I just sat there, probably looking like I was in shock or something. In the end, after he had looked at me for felt like an age, a period of time, he ended up just moving on. And I thought I'd be thrown out at that point, but I wasn't. And I ended up spending a couple of days with all these adults learning these coveted meditation techniques that were one of the monks from Guru Maharaji. And that was my first introduction to meditation. Now, I didn't take it terribly seriously after that. I was at school and I was doing my thing. I was just a kid. But it really wasn't until I was 14 where I had this experience with my spirit guide. I was very grateful to my mother who introduced me to this. My mother was a psychic. At one point, she said to me, I have a spirit guide. Let's do a meditation together and you can find yours and my guide can help you. So we lay down on her big bed together and meditated.
Your mom did that?
Mum.
So instead of talking about boys as a 14-year-old, your mom said, let's just skip that and just go straight to the spirit guides. Is that what happened?
Boys were still very important at that point.
Good.
But yes, I was introduced then. So we meditated and I had an experience. And that experience with meeting my spirit guide has stayed with me. And I still meditate and go to that space to learn and get information.
Okay. So the meditation was more like a primer that kind of like prepared you for meeting the spirit guide?
100%. In fact, that's the only way that I can tap into it, that I found anyway, is through meditating.
What did the spirit guide look like? I mean, did you have a visual? Or?
I do have a visual, but I don't know whether that's so important because some people don't experience that as a visual. I think we experience it all very differently. I am a very visual person, so perhaps that's why it was visual for me. And that's changed over the years. So the visuals changed numerous times, almost like my own growth. So perhaps as I grow, the spirit guide's visual changes.
Really, it changes. I've never heard that before, but I have heard, and tell me if you had similar experiences where spirit guides kind of come and go as you develop, as one develops. It's almost like a baseball game where like one pitcher works for 3 or 4 innings and then they switch to a lefty or something different. And then a closer comes in at the end of the game just to basically finish them off. I've heard that before where your spirit guides are there for certain stages of development. So you had the same one though.
Yeah.
For decades.
Just one. One's enough. Believe me, one is enough.
So did he or she have a name?
Yes, they do, but it's not necessarily something that I'd like to share here. Yeah, it's very, very personal.
What kind of messages were you getting?
Okay, so I get all sorts of messages, and it often depends on if I have a question. So sometimes the spirit guide will answer questions, but sometimes I ask a question and I get an answer to something else because I must have asked the wrong question. Some people might get an idea that spirit guides are kind of light and love, and perhaps they are, but certainly my spirit guide can be quite abrupt, very strong, and there's been more than once that I have been told off. So, in fact, I feel that sometimes my spirit guide gets quite exasperated.
That doesn't really surprise me.
Oh my goodness, really? Come on, Alyssa, come on.
Do they ever curse?
I have not heard that,
Right.
no.
I have heard that.
No, but definitely frustration. There's been a number of very strange things. There was one recently where 2 years ago I had heart surgery and it took me quite a while to recover from that. I spent a lot of time meditating because I was on my back for probably most of 18 months. I was told by all the health experts that I should be moving my body and I should be doing, exercise, but I was just so exhausted I couldn't. And so I went into meditation and I met my spirit guide, and I was having a whinge about not being able to do anything for my body, and I was just lying around all the time. And my spirit guide said, "Get down and give me 10." And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Get down and give me 10 now." And I went, "What do you mean in the meditation?" "Yes, now." So in the meditation, I was visualizing myself doing 10 push-ups. And I was like, this is really strange. This is really weird. They said, it doesn't matter whether you're doing it physically or you're doing it in your mind. You still get all the benefits from it. So I was basically told off for not using this incredible aspect we have, which is here in our visualizations.
So does your spirit guide also have a sense of humor or not necessarily?
Oh, yes. Yes, sense of humor and not anger, but frustration, usually at me.
I kind of suspected that, and I brought this up with another speaker a while back, and I said, I can just imagine them watching me or one of my friends not learning a lesson and just looking at another spirit guide and like shaking their head. This guy's never going to get it. What are they doing now? Or literally throwing their hands up in the air. Apparently that's true. What kind of messages has your spirit guide given you, especially ones that help you in your current work?
Okay, well, my current work is strongly linked. If I'm working with a client and I'm coaching a client, I'm doing some therapy with them, and perhaps there's something I can't quite connect with or I can't quite work out, then I can also use meditation for that. Go to my spirit guide and just say, how can I help this person? And often I'm told exactly what I need to help them with. Or they might say, that's not even the problem. It's way underneath that. The reason why you can't work it out is because that's not the problem, or something like that. So I am definitely guided to help my clients, or they benefit from not just what I've learned in my studies, but also to that deeper level as well. There was once before I was a coach, I was a fashion designer, where I had this huge studio where I was making things. I had my machines, rolls of fabric and everything there. One day when I turned up at my studio, I found that my things had been stolen. A couple of rolls of fabric and some tools had been stolen. I was devastated. It was just, I was working my way up into putting together a fashion show, and this was just catastrophic. And I turned around and went home and felt very, very sorry for myself. And eventually I went to my room and I meditated and spoke to my spirit guide. And I just was, why did this happen to me? Oh no, why? What's the reason? And my spirit guide said, what? Don't you want to know who took it? And I said, I can know that? And my spirit guide said, yeah. And I said, well, who took it? And they mentioned a person's name. And this was someone that I'd met once or twice when I was working in a coffee shop that came and repaired the dishwasher. And for some reason, we got to chatting and they said, oh, look, if you're ever in this area, pop in, and gave me their address. And for some reason, I kept that. And that was the person's name.
So did you confront them or?
I did. So I had their address, and it was actually in the same suburb as my studio. Never been to the place before, found the place and knocked on the door. There was no answer. So I left a little note on the door. This is pre-mobile phones and internet, of course. So I wrote on the note, I just dropped in to say hi, and I put that on the door. And I went back to the studio and went about my business. Now, about 45 minutes later, he turns up at the studio. He turned up and he was grey in the face. And he took me aside and he said, oh, I was really out of it a few nights ago. And I broke in here. And I said, I know. And I took your things. And he was like, how did you know? And I just said, oh, I just sometimes know these things. And apologised profusely and brought everything back to me. That's just one particularly good example. But certainly from that moment on, I have never doubted a word. And he has steered me very well.
Sounds like it. And what you were describing before, like how you help your clients and you consult with your spirit guide to figure out what the real problem is. And often it's something that is, like you said earlier, that's not the real problem. It's beneath that. It sounds like a mediumship reading where a medium is using her guides and perhaps the sitter's guides to see what's really going on. Do you see a parallel there?
I do, except that when I speak with my spirit guide, I'm not with my client.
All right. Okay.
So this is something that I'll do before a session or something like that, particularly if there's a tricky one, or sometimes if someone doesn't really want to share with me, which I'm perfectly fine with. I do a lot of work with people and they don't need to necessarily tell me the problem, but they can just say, I have a problem and I can work with that. That's sometimes enough. So I guess perhaps there is similarities. Maybe it's all one thing anyway. Who knows?
It could be. That leads me to the next question. I don't think you consider yourself or brand yourself a medium, but you did eventually become a shamanic practitioner as well as a hypnotherapist. And what prompted you to learn about shamanism and become actually a practitioner?
I think that I've been unknowingly practicing it always. So I think it's been something that's just in me. It wasn't until later in my life with my readings, just research and reading, that I found that what I did and what shamans do tend to be fairly similar. I've studied shamanism from all different cultures, so I don't really connect to one particular culture. It's more of a general thing. But basically for me, a shamanic practitioner is one that can connect with spirit and can interpret symbols and signs, etc., things like that, which I've been always doing. I just only recently put a name to it because I'd been searching for a word, I guess, that encompassed everything that I did anyway. And that one seems the closest.
You don't really dabble in mediumship then?
No, not really.
Mediumship and shamanism often are overlapping. I interviewed someone recently that is both. She does both. And there's certain things that she said a shaman can do that a medium can't always do. So I thought that was really interesting. So let's talk about dream analysis. How is that part of your work and how did you discover that and why are you using it?
Oh, wow. Well, for a start, the reason why I use it is because it is immensely powerful. Dream analysis and hypnotherapy tend to go hand in hand really nicely because both of those things tap into that universal knowing, the universal knowledge that we are a part of. There's no separation between us and spirit. We are part of it and it is part of us and we are all one. Sometimes that's hard to get our head around. We can understand that intellectually, but not necessarily fully get it. And the reason for that is because we're in our physical body. But in regards to dream analysis, because we're in this physical body and we have logic and all of this, we don't often get to hear what our unconscious or universe, I see it as one, is telling us. We constantly have guidance, constantly, if we are willing to see it. And it's everywhere around us all the time. Some people might hear, okay, I've got the spirit guide that I can see. Not everyone has their guidance like that. That's just how mine works. Whether that's the same or different to anyone else, I don't know. But I do know that we all get messages all the time that guide us. And dreams are one way that our unconscious will give us messages. It goes through filters, though. So sometimes there's different filters, like our beliefs, our upbringing, our programming, and there's all these things that this unconscious, pure unconscious message, which might be something like, you're powerful beyond measure. And the unconscious says, okay, I want you to know this, and it pops it up. But it goes through these filters of humanness, and these filters change the message into symbols. And it might pop up. One of the most powerful filter we have is our culture. Our culture really changes. And this is one of the things with dream analysis. If you've got a dream analysis book, or you tend to look up your dream symbols online, I'd suggest you throw the book out and don't look up those symbols.
You're saying don't look up the symbols. Question about the dreams. What do you make of the dreams where you see a family member or friend who passed on in your dreams? I've been told many times it is them, but other people seem to doubt that, and they think, no, that's just a figment of your imagination. Makes no sense. How do you know if it is indeed them or it's just your imagination? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so it could be one of two things. It could be them. It also could be that the message going through these filters that I was just mentioning, that it changes into the visual experience of the memory of that person. Regardless, the message is still vital. That's what's important. And when it pops up, when this message, let's say this, you are powerful beyond message, and the universe pops it up and it goes through our human filters, and perhaps in one of those, it may actually be a visual of that person who's passed on. That's possible, right? And once we get through all these filters, it might pop up as the visual of that person saying this thing to us, you're powerful beyond measure. Or it could be something that's not those words at all. It could pop up as something like a dog that's sitting by your feet. What does that dream mean? But if you looked up dog on the internet or in your dream analysis book, it might not be right for you because of these different filters that we have in our humanness. An example of this is, let's just say you've got two people, both dream of a dragon. One's cultural background is Chinese and one cultural background is British. And you're going to get very different meanings. That person, when they analyze it, will be very different. Perhaps the Chinese person would see that as a very lucky symbol and there's going to be something very fortunate. Whereas perhaps the person with the British background, they might see that as something like a danger. They're polar opposites. This is why looking up the symbol of dragon is going to be really just the author's interpretation.
Right. It's not necessarily going to be right for you. Okay.
No. So that's what's important.
How about when you dream about a person or a place that is very familiar? You know them, but then when you wake up and that fogginess for about 30 seconds passes and you think, who was that girl? I know her, but I've not met her. What is that?
I think that there could be a few different things here. It could actually be an overlapping of time. So this is where you get prophetic dreams and deja vu. So with prophetic dreams, you dream it without symbols. It is clearly what it is. You dream someone's going to call you today, someone out of the blue you never expected. You wake up and they call you. That's a prophetic dream. Some people have those and some people don't. It's direct. Sometimes with things like what you've explained is like a deja vu, but perhaps in a dream. Maybe there's some kind of time overlap there.
When you say time overlap, are you talking about maybe a past or a future life? Because I've heard that too.
I think that because we're human and we have this relationship with time, I think that that relationship with time keeps us human and in our bodies. But I think universally that doesn't exist. But I think it must exist for us in our human experience.
When you say it doesn't exist, what does not exist?
The lineal time,
Okay.
the past, present, and future, the fact that they're existing all at once. So I think when we have deja vu or a dream like you just suggested, you knew that person, but then you woke up and you realized you didn't know them, perhaps you haven't met them yet. Perhaps it's that universally that time exists as one thing, not lineal, as past, present, and future. But I think we need to experience past, present, and future in our human experience.
One woman who I was interviewing said, I don't believe there's past lives because they're all happening at once. To put it in human terms, that was probably another life, maybe one I've not actually experienced physically yet. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And because you said that and you feel that, I would agree for you. Now, if someone else had that same experience, it might be different for them. This is why it's such an individual thing. It's a direct link from your unconscious, from the universe, you. That's why no one else can tell you what your dream means. I use processes with my clients where they can have a dream and I'll say, focus on your dreams. They'll come to me with a dream and then we'll analyze it. And their symbols are theirs. I help them put the pieces together, but their symbols are theirs because it's so unique. So if you had that experience in your dream that you felt that was a past life or another present life, you want to see it.
Another present life. So in a different dimension, it felt very real. And it's not the first time that's happened. I was always really interested in that. And since you brought up dream analysis, I figured with your clients, things like that have to come up.
I think it's really, really interesting that you say that too, Johnny, because if that's happened more than once and it's a recurring theme, then what is happening there, without a doubt, is that you're being told something. You haven't got it yet. So whatever the message is in there, it's having to come back a few times and recur because it's, one, really important, and number two, you haven't quite got it all yet.
And one of my shaman friends said something similar to what you just said. That is a recurring thing for you. It'll eventually be revealed what that is. I said, okay. I'm not saying I have the same dream about the same girl, but dreams where a place or a person are really familiar. Like, I remember one day I woke up, I thought, who was that? I got to find a way to get in touch with her. And then I thought, it was a dream. I just think it's very interesting how you do that and you do the shamanic practice. Shamanism is really old. It's probably the oldest mystical practice. What is it, like 30, 40,000 years old or older?
Well, I think this is the beginning of humankind, really.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Okay. What are the biggest takeaways from your experiences with spirit guides and the shamanism and the dream analysis? Are they all paths that go and wind up on the one path or not necessarily?
I think that there's so much we don't know. We are vast and immense, but our knowledge is so limited that, to answer your question, so honestly, who knows? What I think is important is that if you get a sense of that and if that works for you and if that's helping you, then that's what's important. Because I absolutely believe that we're here to do good. We're here to make this world a better place, for sure. And however that comes to us, then it's part of that whole big picture. The techniques are less important than what the outcome will be. The technique is just a tool that we use. The real focus here is on how they're used and what difference that they can make. It's how universe connects with you.
If we are listening to our spirit guides, I've been told many, many times, everyone has them, sometimes more than one. That is a way for us to connect with universal knowledge that we can all have access to, right?
Absolutely. But, if people would hear this interview and go, oh, I need to see this and hear this, it may not be how you're being guided. It could be through your dreams. It could be through the symbols that you see. It could be when you're walking down the street and there's a crack in the footpath and that crack pops to you. And then you can work out from what that means in your life right then and there. It could be that little feather that you see. It could be the reflection of the clouds in the high-rise buildings' glass windows. It doesn't always necessarily need to be nature or necessarily in meditation. I just have an experience, and some people may have something similar, but you all have guidance. Everyone on planet Earth has that guidance. And sometimes it's just simply that heart feeling or gut feeling.
The gut feeling of the intuition.
Many different ways that the messages come to us, and everyone has, I guess, their way that connects them with the universe. That's this whole big picture. Like I said, the tools are less important, but the message is what's vital.
Messages. Okay. So how do you see the role of spirit guides evolving in the future? I mean, do you ever think we'll see holistic medical buildings that have shamans and mediums and energy workers, and spirit guides are on floor 2 where you can talk to them? And I'm exaggerating a bit, but do you see the knowledge and the acceptance of these beings actually progressing, or not necessarily?
I think it's progressed so much in the recent past that it's a logical progression. And I can't see it ever going backwards. But I think that science is starting to play a really powerful role here, because finally science is actually doing studies on some of these more obscure tools and finding the truth in them. Years ago, meditation was, nothing. And now they're realizing how incredibly powerful it is for helping people with PTSD and anxiety and all different things that now doctors are recommending. Only 10 years ago, they wouldn't have. So I think this is going to be a natural progression. It's very exciting. And I also think not everyone realizes it. You think, okay, where do these spirit guides come from? Are they just people like you, Johnny, who have collected a life of all these podcasts that you're doing, all this information that's going into you? What's to say that when you're a spiritual being, you've let go of your shell, your physical shell, that you're going to be guiding others? Who's to say that's not your whole purpose? It's not just for this life. You're actually preparing.
I'd be a pretty snarky spirit guide, though, and I would probably get frustrated and get a little irritated with people that they weren't really taking my messages. But as people become more spiritually aware, thinking that from all the discussions all of us have had about like ascension and raising our vibe, is that going to be the thing that really pushes this thing forward? At some point in the future, people are going to say, well, of course you have a spirit guide. Have you not been paying attention in school? Is that like decades or centuries off in the future?
Well, I think that is starting to happen already. And things like what you're doing,
it is.
That's vital. It's really difficult for me to predict that. I certainly hope and I do believe that is going to happen. Yeah, it's happening already, definitely. There's huge changes. And you talk to youth, when I talk to my kids and my kids' friends, it is so different now. They're so much more aware. I think that we really have to bank on that happening, because we have to change. The world has to change. There's a lot that's wonderful.
Here in the States, there's a lot of like non-great things happening. We're not going to go into that, but literally at this moment, but you're right, it does have to change.
And what we can do is do our very best to follow those feelings, follow our spirit guide. If the spirit guide would never tell you to do anything that is harmful to you or others, you can follow that knowing that is the truth. And that is a powerful message for you. If you did get a message that told you to do something that was harmful to you or others, that's not the spirit guide. That's not universal knowledge.
Good point.
So, yes, so I think that this is something that is definitely we're going to see far, far more of. I don't know about other places in the world, but when my mother was a psychic, she's passed on now, when she was doing her psychic work, that was when I was a child. So as I was growing up through my childhood and teen years, Mum was reading all the time, but it was secret. It was something that my mother said, don't you ever tell me that I read.
That's not true now, though.
No, it's not true now, because she was concerned she'd be arrested and jailed. This is just in my lifetime seeing this. when people would call her up and want a reading, basically it was only through recommendation. Who recommended you? If it wasn't someone she knew and trusted, she wouldn't read for them because it was illegal and punishable by law. And so we've really, in just my lifetime, I've seen it cut. Yeah, well, I don't know what it was like in other parts of the world, but this is Australia. We've come a lot further now. Now, of course, people can advertise their services and put it on social media. We can have these kind of conversations.
Psychics and mediums are very common now. There's a book, those of you that are curious, called The Medium Explosion. It's written by a man named Bob Ginsberg, who runs the Forever Family Foundation, which, among other things, they actually test mediums. They test them and they certify them. The book is meant for that person that wants to explore finding a medium to get a reading from, but to be wary of the pitfalls and the things that they need to know about. So definitely good stuff. Alyssa, thanks for coming on to the show tonight. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
Well, it's been great to be here. Thank you so much. And for your work, Johnny. The work that you do is so important. So, yeah, my website, which is alysafreeman.com.au, or on Instagram, which is Alyssa J. Freeman.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. To find more info on the episodes, go to closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.